So welcome to the Naked Peaches. I'm Anna.
I'm Taylor.
And today we have a very special guest, Kristen, who was sent to us by Allison. Everyone has probably seen Allison on social media a little bit at this point. If you haven't, go look at her. She's amazing. But Allison sent you to us because you are an intimacy and acting coach, which is amazing. You have like 30 years of experience, which is also very incredible. And I feel like we're about to learn a lot today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for asking me.
And shout out to Allison, by the way.
Yeah.
She's our content manager and she's also our producer for the podcast. She is the one who keeps this podcast coming to you all, to the Peach Posse behind the scenes every week. So we love her.
We do. We love Allison.
You've known each other forever, right?
It's been since she was in high school. Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
So wow.
That's so cute.
So could you tell us a little bit just about what it is that being an intimacy coordinator means?
So my job as an intimacy coordinator is the safety and choreography of simulated sex scenes on film and television. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest way and the most basic way to describe it. A more detailed description would be that I actually step in as the director during those making of those scenes. Even though there's a director of the project, I'm kind of like a specialty expert that comes in and takes over those particular moments for the actors. So I choreograph the simulated sex. I teach the actors how to move, when to move, what to touch, what not to touch, and it's very detailed.
So, okay, I have like 1,000 questions that I've been thinking about all week because I've been so excited. But one of my like just first and most burning questions is like, I've heard about this job very recently. It's probably been the last like 3 years, let's say, that this is like really even popped up on my radar as being a job. But obviously you've been doing it for a long time, and I know you haven't been doing it for a long time.
No. So this particular job did not exist before 2018-ish.
Okay.
Rolling Stone put out an article about it in 2018. I read the article and I was like, why didn't I think of this? Because my entire career has led to being able to do this. And then I realized I hadn't thought of it because of the PTSD I have as a Me Too Hollywood survivor.
Okay. Because that was going to be my question basically, was like, how has this even evolved in the industry? Because obviously you hear about a lot of the scandals in the industry and a lot of the really fucked up shit that happens to a lot of people. And so, like, yeah, tell us more, please.
So the history of sex scenes in Hollywood is all the way back to the first making of film. I mean, if you go all the way back to the early 1900s, before the Hays Code was put into effect in the 30s, filmmaking was raw. I mean, it was nasty.
What is the Hays Code?
Yeah, what's the Hays Code?
Oh, okay. So before the Hays Code, I'll explain this way.
Okay.
Before the Hays Code, there were no regulations. So a lot of filmmaking was somewhat pornographic. And if you go back, this is historical. You can go back and see that there was a lot of nudity and a lot of sex in silent films even.
That's shocking to me.
Yeah, I did not know that.
It was wild. I have a degree in film studies. It was wild. It was so fun. But what ended up happening is in the 1930s, the government kind of went, this is not good for the morals of our country, and we want to put a stop to this wild, wild west of Hollywood. And so we're going to put in a code saying these are the things that you cannot put in film. Mm-hmm. So that's why when you look at films from the 1930s through the 1960s even, whenever anybody kisses, you only see closed mouth pressing together, and that's it. You're not allowed literally to see any more than that because they weren't allowed to film it any other way. Mm-hmm. So they would do the things like show the fireworks when what that was representing was, oh, they're having an orgasm. And the adult audience members would pick up on that. The kids wouldn't know any better. And that was the whole point of the Hays Code, which then went out the door in the late 60s. And in the early 70s, we kind of got back to a little bit of the wild, wild west, and things started to get a lot more hot and heavy, which brought about extreme assault on every set. Unfortunately, throughout that 40 or 50 year period up until the late 2010s, we never had anybody on set that knew what to do, how to do it safely, or how to direct it. So we ended up eventually having stunt choreographers because stunts were killing people, and stunt choreographers were being asked, hey, we've got this sex scene. Can you kind of come in and help us? And it was the stunt choreographers that came in and went, oh, wow, there's a need here. We've never had this. Why don't we have this? We know women are getting raped on camera. We know that people are getting sexually assaulted on set, but we don't have any way to prevent it or to stop it, because what happens is, as an actor, you step in to do the scene and the director goes, well, you know what to do. I just make it hotter. And that's about all that they would give us. And I say us because I was an actress and I did these scenes. And that was it. That was the only direction we got. So we had to make it up in the moment, and that caused a lot of problems.
I mean, I imagine it was probably very dependent on the person you were partnered with in the scene and how respectful they were, right?
Completely. And I worked with some really respectful actors. And a lot of the sexual assaults that happened were not intentional sexual assaults, but that doesn't change the experience for the person being assaulted. And that's a really important thing for people to understand. And that's one of the things that's sad about this cancel culture. Some people absolutely deserve to be canceled and wiped out. Others didn't know, had no idea. They were just in character and thought this is what we're supposed to be doing, because nobody has ever taught them any other way. Acting coaches, they don't teach us what to do when we have sex scenes.
That's interesting,
Ever.
actually.
Yeah, and that is what I do now, is I am working with actors even before they need an intimacy coordinator to teach. This is my goal, is to be the person that creates the system to teach. This is what you need to know for when you come to this in a script. Okay. And I want them to have that knowledge like prior to the point of needing it. Intimacy coordinators are there when you need it, like when you're actively filming it. My goal is to kind of get it before then, because you don't know that you're going to get along with your intimacy coordinator. You don't know that they're going to be able to do all the things that you need them to do, and that's also part of the issue of it being so new.
So at this point, is it a norm when there is some kind of set that an intimacy coordinator is always there, or is it like just a bonus if one happens to be there?
So if we're working on a union production, it is now a requirement.
Okay.
But there are probably more productions being made that are non-union than there are union, and on non-union productions, it's not a requirement. So a savvy filmmaker, somebody who wants to protect themselves from anything liable, they will try to get intimacy coordinators on set. A lot of people do it just because it's a thing to do. A lot of people do it because they know that it's really needed. And then there are those that do it as a performative stance to just kind of show off, like, oh, look, I worked with an IC.
So like on your average like Netflix show, would you say there's typically an intimacy coordinator?
Almost always, yes.
Okay.
Netflix almost always is a union production at this point, yeah.
Okay, so with what you just said about you know, how people view intimacy coordinators, do you feel like you run into those people a good amount where like in my mind I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm acting in something and someone is telling me there's an intimacy coordinator, I'd be like so stoked, be like, thank goodness this person's going to help us walk through this, you know, they're going to figure this out for us. But do you run into those people often who are very much just like, okay, it's like the intimacy coordinator, let's check the boxes, let's like they give you that pushback when they want to work with you, or do you feel like that's going away?
So I would say that it is probably the opposite of what you think it is. It is the bigger budgets and the Hollywood people that are like, whatever, we have to check the box. And they don't want us. And they will do things like, when I'm being interviewed for higher level productions from Hollywood, I'm almost never hired, because I am so detailed and I give them so much information. They're like, whoa, pull back. All we want you to do is be here. But when I'm working with independent filmmakers who like they don't have any idea how to make their vision come true, when I'm interviewed by them, they're like, wow, this is amazing. We want you. So I think that it's opposite of what you think it is. I think that the bigger productions are doing it because they have to, and they have big egos, and they don't want an expert in this field unless it's a really, really intimate, like Sense8 type of scene. If you've seen Sense8, you know what I mean? They have like really intense, beautiful, beautifully choreographed scenes, or something like Sex Education. You know, unless you're doing something like that, they're like, whatever, we're gonna check the box. And that's sad. It's really sad, because those are also the people that are the reason why we have to have intimacy coordinators.
Yeah, I mean, I just read that article about the new show that The Weeknd and the guy who's the director for Euphoria are working on in Rolling Stone. It's like this expose about their new show and how It's really crazy. You guys should just read it. But like, it's basically like this guy who's the director for Euphoria, I think Sam Levinson is his name, is kind of known now for having these like wild, wild west sets where like, you know, he's basically like wanting to make porn for HBO. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. And I just reading this story, I was like, this sounds like I would be so uncomfortable if I was having to work in an environment like this. Just the things that they were describing, the type of sex scenes, the fact that like, you know, these sex scenes that have violence in them are being written and directed by men. Like, just, I don't know. I feel like if I've never been an actor, but if I were, I would imagine that having like a like woman intimacy coordinator on set would make me feel so much more comfortable in a situation like that.
So I have a lot to unpack with what you just said. So first of all, back when I was acting in the early 90s and everybody looked like Pamela Anderson, and we had the Playboy Channel and we had shows like the Red Shoe Diaries and things that were late night television. We called it Skinamax. It was low budget. Softcore porn was another term.
I've never heard of Red Shoe Diaries before. Yeah. I'm really
it's
curious
a
about
series.
that name.
It's a series of softcore porn.
Okay.
Softcore porn means that genitalia does not touch.
Okay.
That's what that means. I mean, basically from the waist up, you simulate by doing, but from the waist down, it's a no-go zone.
And by not touch, does it just mean like clothes on or like literally no, like not touching?
Completely depended on the director and the DP.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
So women specifically who did jobs back then, like myself, we were ostracized, we were shamed, we were, you know, like we were told as actors, you have to take the jobs you're offered to build your resume, and you have to do that, and everybody was pushing us in that direction because it was so popular back then. But then everybody looked down upon us for doing those scenes, even though we were not, absolutely not doing actual pornography. Now fast forward 30 years later, and the exact same stuff that we were doing 30 years ago is now the most popular thing on the most popular shows in television, like Euphoria, like Sex Education. What you were talking about is I worked with the 30 years ago Sam Levinson, since I was in the movie Showgirls with Paul Verhoeven, and he was very well known for being that guy. You know about the story with Sharon Stone in the movie where he had her cross her legs when she had no panties on and the camera saw everything, and that was scandalous at the time. And that was before I worked with him in Showgirls. So we were working with people like that regularly. So now they're getting called out. But that's the way it was regularly before that. Except, you know, not as much with the big name actors or with the big budget shows.
Yeah.
Now it's so the norm that we can't even begin to imagine why we did this for so long without intimacy coordinators, right? And that's why we have this need now, because so many of us stood up and said, this is not okay, here's what happened to me. And I did not join the Actors Union, SAG-AFTRA, for 25 years that I was eligible to join because SAG-AFTRA did not protect me. And why would I join a union that didn't protect me on sets? I walked away from my career after being raped on camera in front of a cast and crew. So what ended up happening is when I found out about intimacy coordination, I joined SAG-AFTRA for the purpose of speaking to SAG-AFTRA and being one of the hundreds of Me Too survivors that got up there and said, here's what happened to me. You need to make this better.
How receptive have they been to that?
Incredible. It's the fastest tracked thing I think SAG-AFTRA has ever done in its history.
Wow.
I mean, they still don't even have requirements for stunt coordinators the way they are starting to make requirements for intimacy coordinators. It happened that fast because when the national board members read our letters of the details, the nitty-gritty, the gross of what happened to us, they couldn't not do something about it. It was a huge liability to not step up to the plate, basically.
That's incredible. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I realized how big of a movement Me Too was. Like, I think, obviously I saw it on social media, and like, I knew that like it was powerful to see women coming out about their experiences, and like, especially like the more famous names, like, you know, exposing people like Harvey Weinstein and all of that. But I didn't realize that there was actual action happening too. Like, you know, then it sparked this need for intimacy coordinators. So that's really cool that it has resulted in actual change beyond just like people knowing that you know, assault is a problem.
Yeah, it has been incredible. And one of the things that fascinated me as I was in this evolution of this happening was that way back in 2014, I was writing my senior thesis in film studies about the female gaze versus the male gaze. The male gaze is what we always see on screen. The female gaze is very, very rare, but it's what women produce in terms of simulated sex scenes.
I would love to read this paper.
Yeah, I'm super curious. Yeah. I actually sometimes I wonder myself if I even know what the female gaze is, because I feel like as a photographer I would love to capture it, but I feel like we just know one type of what sexy is.
100%. 100%. Remind me, I want to get back to that. So back in 2014, one of the things that I was writing about was the show Outlander. And the first season of Outlander, if you've ever read the book.
I love Outlander.
You know, good. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. There's an amazing scene that we knew was coming, and it was the wedding episode when the two lead characters get married. And the interesting thing about this that we'd never seen really done on screen before is that she is experienced sexually and he is not. And this is a big deal. So I went online to do my research and I started looking at Outlander fandoms, and all of the fans were talking about these two actors actually having sex on screen. I was like, no, they don't. And people were like, oh, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm the one that does know what I'm talking about. That led to, within 24 hours, I had a separate secret fan group for Outlander fans to teach them how sex scenes are actually created. So I started teaching about how sex is filmed on camera at least 4, if not 5 years before intimacy coordinators became a thing.
Oh, wow. Can you give us a very brief version of how it's actually done?
So back in the day, you might hear terms like, I always want to tell you the history. So I'm always going to go back to the way it was versus the way it is.
I
love
that.
that.
Important.
Yeah.
And we know nothing about this, so this is really interesting for us.
Okay. So back in the day, the wardrobe department would give the woman a Band-Aid about this big to cover her labia.
Okay, she's showing something kind of the size of smaller than a cell phone.
Smaller than a cell phone, smaller than a panty liner.
Okay.
If you got something the size of a panty liner, you were lucky.
So for us big labia girls over here, this is okay.
And the wardrobe department would give the man a tube sock, a literal white sport tube sock, and that was it. And so if you ever hear guys say that they're a member of the sock club, that's what that means.
Ew.
That's what that means, is they wore a sock while they were filming.
I feel like that could also fall off really easily.
And it does. And it does.
The second you start sweating, that Band-Aid is falling off my labia.
Yeah. Or any friction.
But even worse than that, inevitably, the director and the DP, to the women only, always, would go, the camera can see you're covering, we need you to take it off. So we were almost never protected.
I hate that.
But the guy gets to keep wearing his tube sock.
Most of the time, but not always. There were times when I was forced to do scenes skin on skin. And that's how I inevitably ended up being raped on camera, because the actor was untrained, unprepared. He did not intend to go on set and rape me that day. But in the moment of the scene, and if you're doing your job well and you're active, making it look like you're enjoying yourself kind of a moment, the body has a physiological response like muscle memory. So even though the actor's brain is, okay, I'm counting down, I have to make this look like I'm doing an orgasm, and you're not thinking sexy thoughts, the body is going, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do right now. Erection. And inevitably that happens. Even today, with all of the protections, we still have to be careful and aware of the fact that we have physiological responses that are uncontrolled and unwanted. This is something that happens on trial in rape cases constantly, is that we have to explain to the juries that the rape victim may have, for instance, gotten wet. And they try to say, well, that means she wasn't raped. Bullshit. That means she had a physiological response that she was not able to control. And that happens in filming. So
I'm sure,
So not having any protection and being forced to be skin on skin is a recipe for disaster, and it was. And my story is not unique. I don't want anyone to think that my story is unique. I am one of thousands of women that this happened to. Fast forward to what we do today, we choreograph it so that almost never are the genitalia in contact. We can choreograph it for camera so that even covered, you are not in that zone where you're on each other. But if we need you to be that way for camera, for whatever the scene requires, We will cover both parties completely, but we will also put barriers. So imagine something like a yoga mat in like the sock. And so the man has a yoga mat padding, the woman has a yoga mat padding. When they're pressed together, they're not actually feeling each other's genitalia.
Okay.
Even if they're pressed together.
So it's like padding on padding.
Padding on padding. And this is to prevent that physiological response, which can still happen. But if it does, there's no shame, there's no blame, but the intimacy coordinator is trained in what to do and how to handle it to give the actors the space and the time that they need to calm themselves down to be able to continue filming without letting the entire crew know what's happening.
Got it.
So how do you do that? How do you say like, okay, let's, he's got a boner, let's take a break without like making it a big scene?
I have some secrets
Yeah.
that I do, but I always have private meetings with each individual actor before we go on camera. I also privately talk to the director, and I let all of my directors know I have the power to call cut whether you like it or not, because I'm going to be aware of things that are happening that you don't need to be aware of. And if that happens, you have to respect that I'm calling cut, and you have to respect that we need a 10-minute break for whatever the reason is. And a lot of directors really don't like that. Well, too effing bad. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have some secrets. So what I will do is I will talk to the actors individually, and I will give them the opportunity to learn a hand signal or a code. They can continue the scene, they can be in the scene, but if they do a specific movement, and I'm watching everything, if I'm not with them in the room, I'm on monitor and I'm watching everything. If I see that signal, we're done, we're taking a break, and I don't even need to talk to them about why. If they just need that break, I don't need to shame them or embarrass them. I just give them the time. Other things can happen too. Women get periods. Sometimes we don't know it's coming.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many times I got my period in the middle of a scene.
Yeah.
It just happens, So I'll tell the female actors the same thing. It doesn't matter what it is. You get your period, you get nauseous, you get uncomfortable you're triggered and you don't even know why you're triggered. There's so many reasons why we may need to stop having this moment right now and give ourselves time and space to get ready to get back to it, to finish the scene. Ultimately, intimacy coordinators are not there to destroy the process. We're there to help the process so that the story is being told, but that it's being told safely and comfortably for everybody involved. And when I get on a set, I'm there for the crew as well as for the actors, because there are crew members that have never been involved in simulated sex scenes. They don't know what to expect. They don't know where to look. They don't know how to properly behave, or they're creepers that shouldn't be on set in the first place, and I'm going to call them out and get them off my set. I know you guys are just like,
I know.
It's like
there's so much.
so much to take in, so many questions. I want to talk more about the female gaze, but I also don't want to get too much off topic of intimacy coordination. I feel like we have so many avenues we can go down.
We can, but I think it all does like live under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I grew up with parents it was the 70s. I was a child of the 70s. My parents were, nudists. They were somewhat hippie. We grew up with Playboy and Penthouse and all that stuff in the house, and it was like normal, everyday thing.
What does your parents being nudists mean, by the way? Like were they like naked all the time?
Well, it's not that they were naked all the time. What it means is like we would go to nude beaches or, sunbathe topless or, at home, like my entire childhood, my dad would walk around in front of me naked. I would walk around naked. Like it wasn't an issue. It was never a sexual issue. It was, we all have bodies, get over it.
Okay.
Yeah. But growing up with Playboy and Penthouse, which I modeled for both, by the way, which...
Yes, queen.
Yeah, we love this.
Having those in my house growing up, like what you commented on, I only knew the male gaze. I only knew that I wanted to be those women because wow. But I never understood or even had a concept of the fact that if it was all being done by women, it might look very different. Fortunately for me, when I modeled for Playboy, it was an entire female crew, including a female photographer.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Not the norm.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that really rare?
It was pretty rare.
Yeah.
But I did have that experience, which is completely opposite of my experience with Penthouse when I photographed with the most well-known and body of worked Penthouse photographer of all time. I was sexually assaulted by him. So complete juxtaposition.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Which makes sense when you think about those people that are in power in these situations where it's like, of course they can keep getting away with stuff like this because who's going to, do anything?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the female gaze is something that we never thought about as a society until I think it was in the 1970s or late 70s or 80s. I cannot remember her full name at the moment, but it was Lori or Laura somebody, and she wrote an essay about the female gaze, and it was a critical theory essay that is now taught in film studies because it was the first time that anybody had ever really kind of thought about that. So it's a concept that a lot of people don't know and don't understand. And it's interesting to think about that because we are so programmed. Now, there are a lot of documentaries coming out recently that are focusing on this exact topic. Brainwashed is one that just came out last year. I do recommend that you see that. It's a documentary about why is the history of film the male gaze.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I want to watch that.
Yeah, and there's more that are coming out like that. And it's really interesting for me with my life to watch those things and be like, I was there when that happened. I did that. Like, wow, yes, you know.
Yeah.
So much of it. And I was watching Brainwashed and I actually started crying because part of one of my scenes from the movie Showgirls was in it. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, there I am in the background. I was there when that happened.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Like literally on set when it happened. So it's a very interesting time. I think there are a lot of women like me, but I don't think that all of them have got to the point in healing what happened to them that they could do what I do. I actively went to therapy as soon as I found out what intimacy coordination was. Like literally like, okay, I found out what this is. I want to be a part of this movement. Oh my God, I have severe PTSD. And so I actively went to a therapist and said, here's what happened to me, but I want to turn it around and I need to heal so that I can turn it around without being triggered. My story is not unique. It's the fact that I purposely, actively took the time to heal so that I could turn it around and work in the industry again at a level of making sure that things don't continue to happen for other people the way they did for all of us.
What kind of therapy did you do? Like, was it a specialized type of therapy?
No, I do appreciate all different forms of therapy. I'm a unique individual. My father's a Buddhist monk. And so as a monk, he would counsel people. So there was a lot of counseling going on in my house when I was growing up. So I grew up with therapy as a modality for life. So I appreciate all different types of therapy and that everybody has different needs. I have complex PTSD, and there are a lot of things that I could have done, but honestly, because I grew up with knowledge of coping mechanisms and how to, kind of deal with stuff, all I really needed to do for myself was just tell my story. Was just sit with a therapist and go, here's what happened to me, and it fucking sucked. And it destroyed my life. It destroyed my career, all of my dreams. And now what do I do? Well, here's my answer. I get to be back in the industry that I love, hate so much because I get to do it in a safe environment. And now I'm thriving. When I'm behind the camera, and I'm eventually very soon, hopefully going to be in front of the camera again for the first time in 27 years. But when I'm behind the camera, I'm on top of the world. I am in my element. There's no trigger. There's no PTSD. There's no feeling of awkwardness. I'm like, no, I got this. I know exactly what's going on. And I love that feeling now. So I wish for all of the women like me that are Me Too survivors. I won't call them victims. We're all Me Too survivors. I wish that they could get to that point where they could step up to the plate again and get to relive the joy and the love of this art that they didn't get to continue with because we all got so badly damaged.
I'm so glad you're telling your story. This is so inspiring.
Powerful, yeah.
Thank you.
And I think it's applicable too to obviously this is a huge thing in Hollywood, but there are a lot of industries where a lot of fucked up stuff happens to women especially, and so I think this is really applicable across the board.
Oh, completely. Like in boudoir photography. In 2005, I opened up an exotic pole dance studio, and that became a chain of studios, and one of the things that we offered our clients is we did boudoir photography in my studios for our students, for our dance students. And I made sure that every single person in the room was always female. We never worked with a male photographer. That doesn't mean that male photographers aren't good boudoir photographers, and it doesn't mean that they're not safe, because a lot of them are really good at what they do and very caring and considerate. But we need to take the power back. We need to be able to offer this to women so that they're completely comfortable. And a lot of women aren't comfortable with men for good reason. And so I love what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing, and I'm very familiar with the work. And it's empowering. It is empowering to have women know that they can be sexy for themselves and their partner doesn't ever need to see the shots even. Do it for yourself. Make yourself feel good. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
1000%. And we know male photographers who I love and respect. I personally, as like a customer before I was ever introduced to this industry as like someone who works in it, never would have gone to a male photographer because I just never would have been comfortable. I think it's so important to offer like a safe space. And
Yeah, so when I started modeling in like 1980 something, it was actually kind of a dare, like a challenge. This guy in high school looked at me and he goes, "You're almost pretty enough to be a model." And I went, "Fuck you, I'm going to do it."
Wow.
So it was like a reactive response. And I'm like, I'm going to be a model, just, you know. So I started modeling for all these just random guys that were like, "You're pretty, let me take your picture." And I went, "Okay," because I just wanted to learn how to model. But I had a lot of street smarts. I grew up in Los Angeles, and in a time when I was alone all the time, traveling on, you know, like major bus routes and things like that. And as a 12-year-old girl, I would be on the city bus for 2 hours just to get somewhere to do something. Times were different. I'm old. What was interesting is that all of those random guys that I said yes to, I never ever once experienced sexual assault because I always went with my gut feeling. But when I got sent to do professional jobs through my agents, almost every single one of them I experienced sexual assault through in the professional world and on the professional level.
It's so terrifying, yeah.
Right?
And that is like such a common story in modeling.
Yes. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Photography it is so scary, like how many like abusive pervy men are able to just get away with it as photographers. I mean, I do think it's like people are starting to get exposed, but it's like it flies under the radar way too often. I think that whole like setup of like your agent just sends you a job and you just show up, and it could be the photographer's studio, it could be their house, it could be a random hotel room, like you know, and you're sort of at their whim.
Yeah,
it's like
completely. And
so
and
unsafe.
I don't want to just like single out males, because there are women bad actors too, and I've been with and seen women on sets and photographers that are also incredibly inappropriate. So I mean, it does happen across the board. It's just more often that the men are assaulting the women.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more? I'm just kind of curious about like, what was it like when you were on these film sets, you know, back in the day before anybody was ever talking about Me Too, and all of the female actors were experiencing like, you know, having these traumatizing experiences with sex scenes and all of that. What was it like? Like, did you all talk about it with each other? Was it kind of like everyone was ashamed? You didn't talk about it because it's like almost kind of embarrassing. Like, what was that experience like?
So I grew up being a very strong, very proud feminist. My dad and my mom's, I had a mom and a stepmom, just like that was just the way things were. I was always taught to never take shit from anybody, period. And so I was the loudmouth on the sets. If anything was happening, I immediately called it out. I was the one that got in people's faces. I was the big mouth. I was like, no, you don't get to do that to me. Fuck you. And I watched and observed all of the other women. It's like you can see the wheels spinning in their minds. I could see them go, "Oh God, this is awful. I don't want this to happen to me." And then there was that moment where I could see them go, "But if I say no, I'm going to lose my career." And they would all just give in. And they would not stand up against it. So I was the one that always tried. I never just took it. Even though it all happened to me, I never just sat back and was like, "Oh my God, that happened." No, I was like, "Fuck you, asshole. I'm going to cut your fucking dick off right now." You know, that was my attitude, you know? And because of that, I often got in trouble. So for instance, on the set of Showgirls, there was a famous actor who made himself the breast inspector. And he decided that he was going to go around and physically grab every woman's, and I watched him do it to every single one of the dancers. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in the hallway and he came up to me and there was nobody else around. It was just the two of us. And he starts talking to me and he's trying to sweet talk me, and I knew it was coming. And eventually he starts to reach out, and I, you know, used my fist and I knocked his hand away and I said, "Did I fucking give you permission to touch me? I don't think so, asshole." And I went off on him. And then I immediately went to the SAG-AFTRA rep on set and turned him in. 15, 20 minutes later, they came to me and they said, "You are no longer allowed anywhere near him. Don't go near him. Don't talk to him. Leave him alone."
Of course, it's your fault.
Yeah, of
you
course
were
it's your
asking
fault.
for
Yeah.
it. I hate that so much.
Yeah. So the experience that I had, and I don't know that it was like this for everybody, but the experience that I had is I was very vocal. I would go to all the other women. I was always trying to, get help and, make sure that things didn't go this way. I felt like I was their protector, like I was watching over everybody all the time. But most of them were just this silent, meek sheep, like, I want my job. My job's more important, that kind of thing. And it was sad to watch. It was hard to watch. As a dancer, as a stripper, I tried, as soon as I found out that in Canada, strippers were unionized, even back in the early 90s, I was like, we need that. And I tried.
Know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. I was like, we need that, so we need to unionize. I had one other dancer out of all the dancers I knew, only one other one that was like, yeah, let's do this. And very quickly she was like, oh no, we can't, let's stop trying. So that fell to the wayside. We were so used to being tread upon that, that was just the norm, that nobody wanted to stand up to it at the time because it was the threat of your career, and they held that threat over us constantly. I mean, if I tried to get off of a set because they asked me to do something that I didn't sign up for. So like, for instance, you're cast in a movie as a lead and you're so excited, but you haven't seen the whole script yet, and that happens all the time. Oh yay, I get this job. So you're on the set for day one and they hand you your contracts and they hand you your script and you're reading through it, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I have to do 4 simulated sex scenes with 4 different actors. And this is like insanity. I don't want to do this. They would say, well, you can't leave because if you do, we're going to sue you for the cost of the entire production. So then you're forced to make that choice of, do I, as a penniless, starving artist who's trying to get a career, do I hire a lawyer and protect myself with money that I don't have, or do I just do the work?
Yeah, and I'm sure if you go the lawyer route, you get blacklisted. And,
completely.
That's the end of your career anyway.
Well, the thing is, like, the fact that you're constantly just forced to make decisions because you want to keep working and you want to, like, you love your work, and the trade-off is like, okay, well, I'm going to be assaulted or I'm going to be raped, or it's like, like, certain things are like happening and like you're seeing it all the time, but it's like you're in this position where you can't do anything about it because you want to work still. Like, that's so fucked up,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why we're trying to change everything today. And it's still not there. Even though we've been doing this for 4 years now, it's still not there. I mean, look at the stories that have come out recently, very recently, by Sydney Sweeney, is that her name?
Yes. Yeah.
Or Jenna Malone just came out with a story this last week about what happened to her on the set of Hunger Games. I mean, this is still happening to young actors. Sydney Sweeney was not paid very much for Euphoria because she was the unknown, but she was the one that always went nude and topless.
Yep.
And Zendaya didn't have to because Zendaya was more well known, and in her contracts, her agents made sure that her contract stated no nudity. There's a no nudity clause. So Sydney was the one who was being used on sets. This is normal in Hollywood, and it's not okay. And that's why we're doing the work that we're doing, but we're at the beginning. I mean, we have been making films for over 100 years. And we are only 4 years into this even being a thing.
Yeah.
And now you have ICs popping up everywhere, which is great because they're needed, because filming is going on everywhere all the time. But are they really well trained in the little bit of training that they get to understand all of the history and all of the ins and outs and all of the nuance? Because this is not a black and white subject. So there's a lot that needs to be discussed continually. There are things that need to be changed contractually. There are things that need to be changed union-wise. I mean, we're constantly up against this same fucking battle that we've been fighting all along, except for in the 1900s and 1920s, because back then, believe it or not, women actually ran Hollywood. Women were the writers and directors.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, the majority of writers and directors were women in the beginning, and very quickly men stepped in and took over and kind of blacklisted women from those power roles.
Always. The tale is old as time.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we had another episode where we talked with a friend of mine who has had a lot of kind of like big changes in her career, and also like gone through a lot of different iterations of like figuring out what she cares about and what she wants to spend her time on. And one of the things we came up with was that she had kind of spent her whole life training for this thing that she was doing at that time without realizing it. And I feel that way about boudoir. And I feel like you have kind of done that with intimacy coordination. Like you've been training for this your whole life without even really realizing it.
Completely. Yeah, completely. If you look at everything that I've done, I did the work, and then I opened a studio where I taught thousands of women how to do the work. without being on camera, except for if they were doing boudoir photography. And I was actively teaching them how to choreograph their own sexual encounters at home because they asked me to, not because it was like my idea. Like they came to me and they're like, "You're so good at this. Can you help me?" And I was like, sure. I mean, I want to help wherever I can. So that inadvertently became my job. So I've been doing this since before it was even created, and I had no clue that I was actively working towards this point. But then once I had that realization, that's why I had to go to therapy, because I realized exactly what you just said. Like, literally the reason I went through the shit is so that I can be the change today.
How many of the current people that like do this type of work, like our ICs, have actually done what you've done, where they've, you know, they've been the actress, they've been in front of the camera, they've gone through a lot of this stuff, and then now we're, you know, on the other side teaching?
I can't say 100% for sure, but probably very, very, very few of them.
Okay, so it's just, it's not common.
It's not common at all. I mean, what I see is look for the certification programs, and what the actual list that SAG-AFTRA came up with, what they're actually looking for is someone who's more trained in like mental health first aid is a very important part of it. Somebody who has movement in their background, and somebody who has at least taken an acting class, but maybe they have directed something and have that kind of experience. It's very basic ideas of this is what your experience should be.
That doesn't seem like enough at all.
No.
my 2 cents.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like we talk about this with boudoir too. Like, we've talked about how important it is for us to get in front of the camera and experience what our clients experience, because it's so vulnerable, and like we need to be able to empathize with how nervous they are when they come in, and kind of, you know what has helped us get to the point of feeling really good on camera,
right,
in order to share that with them. And I know that there are some photographers who don't ever get in front of the camera, and I feel like that again is like a similar sort of thing, where it's like you may be amazing at what you do, but like you can never truly empathize with the person you're trying to help if you haven't been in their shoes.
That's so true. Another thing that I've noticed more recently, just in this past 3 or 4 months, a lot of people who are now intimacy coordinators are doing so because they are sex therapists, and they work with intimacy coaching on the real level of actual active sex with people. That's not what we are doing. We're doing simulated sex. So having that in my mind does not automatically make you good at this.
Well, yeah, because it seems almost counterintuitive. Because if you're a sex therapist, you're teaching people how to feel more intimate with each other, but an intimacy coordinator, it's like, you should be making people feel like this isn't this really intimate, vulnerable thing.
Exactly. And that's one of my biggest fears when I see those things popping up left and right. My fear is this is not necessarily the right path. Now, I don't know these people personally. Maybe they are 100% on the right page. Totally. I just don't know. I'm looking at, what I'm seeing online, and it's like, oh, I'm an intimacy coach for, couples sex therapy. That is exactly what we're trying to prevent in front of the camera. And we need to know how to get actors to look like they're doing those things without feeling those things, because when you feel those things, that's when bad things happen.
What are some key ways that I know you talked about like the yoga mat padding and whatnot, but like what are some other key ways that you can like fake stuff? Because obviously we fake stuff too all the time. We're photographers, like we make things look like, for instance, we recently posted these shower photos that we had, shower photos and videos where like, the water dripping, it's like very sexy, but in the room at the time, it was very much just like, okay, do that one more time, start doing this. Like it was funny, and all of us are like laughing, and it was very ridiculous, but it wasn't anything like what these videos turned out to look very, very sexy compared to what was happening.
That's exactly what it's like on film. That's exactly what it's like. It is not comfortable. And as you both know, when you are going to get the right shot, your body is in a position that ow, ow, ow. Okay, get the shot. This hurts.
Yes.
That's what it's like when I am choreographing something for my actors. I let them know that we're doing this for camera. What you do at home is not what you do for camera. So when you are on the bed with your partner, no matter what is, even if it's like the simplest missionary position, I'm going to put you in a position that is going to be so physically uncomfortable you don't want to hold it, because that's what looks the best for camera, and that's what makes it look the most normal and natural for camera. But in order to get that shot, ow, 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 I'm having to hold myself on my elbow, and I, twisted, and I'm turned, and I'm like, lifting my chin. And so it's very, very specific and very uncomfortable. And when I tell my actors, you're going to be really uncomfortable, I'm not talking about you're going to be uncomfortable because you're getting turned on. No, I'm talking about you're physically going to hurt.
You're going to be sore.
You're going to be sore. Yeah. And also knowing how to position bodies for camera. If you've never done it, like awesome that I have the background of being the boudoir stylist and having done the boudoir modeling. That helps me so much. It informs me as an intimacy coordinator what I need to do for the DP on a film set. And so I can get people in the missionary position without the woman being between the legs.
So you mentioned coordinating sex scenes for your pole clients at home. I'm super interested. I feel like our listeners, the Peach Posse will be super interested in this. Just because, like, I feel like it's hard to initiate sex sometimes as a woman. Like, it feels embarrassing.
I feel so awkward when I initiate. Like, I'll come out in lingerie and I'm like, I'm so
literally.
awkward.
Yeah. So just, like, please tell us, what did you tell people to do?
It's a little complex. It's not just telling people what to do.
Yeah.
So what I would do, so many of my dance students and clients would come to me and pull me aside at the end of class and be like, okay, this is all great and I'm learning and I'm starting to feel sexy for the first time. And because I'm starting to feel sexy, I want to have this, like, I'm going to plan this romantic weekend or I'm going to plan a vacation. But when we get there, I want X, Y, and Z to happen. How do I make that happen? So it was very specific to each individual person. But the overall gist is, first of all, what makes you feel sexy? And this is something that people don't understand. If I would ask a room full of 15 people to bring an item that represented what sexy was to them, I would have 15 different items. That's important. People are like, why do I have homework in my dance class to bring a thing? This matters. We'd have the conversation of, you need to have a conversation with your partner of what is sexy to you, because when you're dancing and you're, doing something for your partner and you're thinking, maybe the dancer, the woman who's trying to turn on her partner, maybe she's all about, leather and ropes and bondage in her mind, and he's sitting on the couch going, I'm thinking, lace and candlelight and rose petals. These two things don't match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So having the conversation before you ever start the encounter of, what's sexy to you? So this is like the first stage. And then once you have that open dialogue of, this is what's sexy to me, this is what's sexy to you, okay, great. Then you'll have an idea of how to get things started. But things physically that we don't think of when we're in real life, as boudoir photographers, you'll already know these things. I can just tell you. As dancers, you're already going to be learning these things if you're in a dance class. So that was really easy for me to get them to the next level. Here's how you start the encounter. And that was from the music choices to the setting. I would go over them, this is the setting that you want to create, to the outfit that you would wear, to what happens if I do this and I'm very serious and I do get a response of giggles and laughs. And my answer, Posse, just so you know, y'all should be giggling and laughing during sex.
Yes. True.
Period.
Yeah. It should be fun.
It should be fun. And don't ever feel bad about the fact that there's a moment where you're both just like, enjoying it in that way where you're, giggly and silly. And eventually the more intense moments will happen and it'll be incredible. Mm-hmm. But it's all about having the confidence to know that you're just going to do it. You're just going to go for it.
That's good advice.
That is good advice, yeah.
I like that. I'm taking a lap dance class for the first time this week, and I feel like I'm going to try and put this into practice when I perform my final lap dance for my husband.
Yes.
You should.
Prepare your whole night.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah, you absolutely should. So my husband, we've been together now for over 23 years. My husband was the guinea pig for all of the work that I do and still is. So he cracks up. He's awesome because I could be like, okay, honey, I need to choreograph something, but I need to know that it works. And I would just use him and not for real.
Your thigh.
Yeah, exactly. And he's all about it. And he would give me constructive feedback like, okay, is this movement good? If I'm going to teach my student this, he'd be there with the notepad writing things down. And, so I had that immediate feedback and I still do. Why not be with your partner and be like, let's try this. Let's do something new. What do you think about this? And use that dialogue. And don't be afraid to say no. If it's not working for you, it's not working for you, period. And that's okay. We need to be allowed to have those conversations where we say, this turns me on, and no, this isn't turning me on.
Women are taught, for a long time, that it's like your pleasure doesn't matter as much. You know, it's like it's all about like the guy needs to orgasm or whatever it might be, but it's like you're going along with it, or you're the sexy object or whatever it might be, but it's not, you know, it's like it's two people and both people experiencing pleasure.
Exactly. I think the life that I had as a stripper in Hollywood for 8 years gave me so much awareness and so much confidence because I was a burlesque performer. I was not doing lap dances. I was not being touched. You have to stand up for yourself because you're in an environment where people automatically assume that you're fair game. And I absolutely wasn't there to be fair game. I was there to be a performer. That gave me the power that I need now to stand up to a Hollywood producer or director, somebody who's famous, and look them in the face and go, I don't care who you are. You don't get to do this. Period. Don't even try it with me because I will stop you in your tracks. And if you don't have that power within yourself, how are you going to prevent assault for somebody else? I think that's part of what should be trained for incoming new ICs. That was just the stripper in me.
Yeah.
That's my Crystal coming out. I was Crystal on stage.
Crystal?
Yeah.
Great name.
Crystal was in charge.
Yeah.
Always.
Did that make it easier to get into character of like, I'm in charge, I'm telling these dudes what to do, like giving yourself an alter ego?
100%. 100%. Yes.
Maybe I need one for my
Yeah,
just normal
sexy
sex with my
alter ego.
husband. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how are you still working in Hollywood? Because I just feel like so many people like that do try to have that power, then, you know, they get blacklisted from movies, they get blacklisted from sets, or with working, like, it just seems to really negatively impact your career if you do actually call out the bullshit that's happening.
Yeah, I'm not working in Hollywood. I'm here in Portland.
Okay.
Yeah, and when Hollywood calls me and I have those meetings, they don't hire me. They
Yeah.
don't. And
Yeah.
it's not because I'm rude, and it's not because I'm not professional, and it's not because I'm, you know, inexperienced. It's the exact opposite. It's
Yeah.
because I'm extremely professional. I have more experience than they know what to do with. It scares them. And they don't want to have to deal with that because they're afraid that once I'm there, I'm going to take over. The people who have worked with me know that I'm a collaborator. I am not the person that comes in and tramps on your process. I come in and I assist your process. But I'm not beneath you. I will not be beneath you. Now, I mean, if I'm asked by an individual, if I'm asked by somebody I've worked with, or if I'm asked by a specific individual based on a recommendation, of course I would go to Hollywood and do the work. But I'm not going to move there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jump back in with both feet in Hollywood. No, I'm on the outskirts for a reason.
So I know a lot of productions film here now. Do you work on a lot of the productions that come through Portland? Is that like what you tend to be doing?
No, I've worked on a few. I've worked on a few. I actually haven't done that much. I've done a lot more consulting than I have actual on-set time.
Okay.
I have worked on many productions here, but just there's not as much going on here as there used to be. We're gearing up for some more to come in. The behind-the-scenes people in the industry here in Portland have been working really hard to bring a lot more work. So we're hoping that this year's going to be a much bigger year. But in the last 4 years and dealing with COVID, 3 of those years,
Yeah.
Of course.
there just hasn't been a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. And what does the consulting that you're doing look like?
So a lot of times what will happen is directors will call me and they'll say, I have this scene and what do I do? What do I need to do? And I will just talk them through the process without actively going to the set and working on the set.
Yeah.
And just give them kind of their own checklist of make sure these things are the bare minimum.
And you're also writing your memoir.
I am.
Can you tell us a little bit
tell us a
about
little
that?
So my memoir is called Shevolved. My website is Shevolved, and that's She Evolved. Shevolved, smush it together, because I feel that I have evolved from being the Me Too Hollywood survivor into being the Me Too preventer. And that's the evolution that I have kind of gone through with my career. It's actually a 3-part story. The story of me working in Hollywood before I got breast implants, what happened after I got the breast implants, because that's a whole story in and of itself. And then after my breast implants were removed, and it was 3 months after my breast implants were removed that I went from being completely disabled to opening up the exotic pole dance studios.
Wow.
Okay, I can't wait to read this
I
memoir.
know,
number
I'm
one.
so excited about this book.
Number 2, what made you open up these pole studios? Like going from one thing to then be like, okay, my career now is going to be like pole studios, and then having that be thriving for a while. Like, what was that transition?
So my career as an actor ended completely the day that I found out I was pregnant with my first son. I had to cancel all the work that was scheduled because I was immediately bedridden. And several things happened, but I then just went into mom mode. I was just mom, you know, and then I had my daughters, so 3 kids and very young, and I was completely disabled. So I went from, like the moment I got pregnant is when everything ended for me physically, but then it just continually got worse. And this was because of the toxic breast implants. So I was completely disabled. And
you had the implants while you were
had the implants while I was pregnant and had my children, yes. And then had the implants removed. And you can see it. I have pictures the night before my surgery and 2 weeks after my surgery. I look like a completely different person. The toxicity level in my body dropped that drastically so fast.
Wow.
It's still in my body. I mean, I'm going to fight this for the rest of my life. I'm never going to be the same physically as I was. So I met a friend who was a belly dancer, and we were just talking, and I mentioned that I used to be a stripper, and she's like, oh my God, I've been belly dancing for years, but I've never learned how to like dance like a stripper. I want to learn how to do this. And I said, well, I can teach you. I've always wanted to learn how to belly dance. So we ended up going to her studio for 1 hour, and she showed me some moves. I showed her some moves, and she said, you need to actually do this. Like, this could be a thing. And this is a woman who had been well known in the belly dance world. Like, she had been teaching for a long time. And I kind of was like, I don't know, maybe. And so I did some mock workshops with friends of mine just to see if like it was a thing. And they all were like, oh my God, this is so much fun. And that's how it started. It like within 3 months, boom, I was up and running. And I was not in any way intending to teach pole dance. Mm-hmm. I was only thinking about teaching your everyday average woman how to love herself in the skin that she's in, how to accept her body the way that it is, and how to learn how to feel and be sexy without doing it for anybody else. And my clients paid to open my first pole dance studio. One client bought all the poles, one bought all the mirrors, one paid my first month's rent. I mean, I had nothing. I was like completely destitute, disabled for so long trying to raise 3 kids, and my husband was working 3 jobs. So wow. That's how it happened.
Wow, that's incredible.
That is so incredible.
Well, one thing I was really curious about and wanted to ask about is before you started teaching like pole classes, when you first started out and you were teaching more of these like kind of just love yourself. Yeah. Like, what were you teaching women when you were doing that was so empowering and making them feel so good?
It was the movement. So my first lesson, which was the hardest lesson of all, you always start with the hardest shit. Always. And that's what they do in film too. They always do the first day of shooting as the sex scenes, because if the actors can't handle it, they have the opportunity to recast them.
Interesting. Okay, I would never expect that. It makes sense though.
So the first lesson that I gave every woman that started at my studio was she was forced to do a sexy walk towards the mirror, but she had to be looking at herself. Tears and tears and sobs and tears. And oh my God, so many women were like, I hate you. I'm never coming back. I can't believe you made me do that. And those are the women that ended up working for me and becoming the next level of instructors, because they had the most profound life-changing experience from being forced to just observe themselves. And so I would start with the very basic sexy walk, and then we would do that towards the mirror. And then we started with 6-week classes, and this entire 6 weeks would be very basic exotic dance moves. So it was warming up. As I'm warming them up, I would say, tell me something about you, your body that you love. What's one thing on your body that you love? You have to share. Women in our society, we're not taught that it's okay to even like something about ourselves, let alone love something about ourselves. Mm-hmm. So having women do that was terrifying for them and challenging. And they were like, wait, what? I don't understand. How am I supposed to answer this question? Just pick something. Are you having a good hair day? Do you like your eyelashes? Whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It could be one eyebrow hair. I don't care.
Yeah.
We need to find the things that we love about ourselves. And that's how I would start it. And we would build on that. And every week we would do more and we would build more. And by the end of the 6 weeks, one of the things that we did is I had each woman would have to choose a theme song for her sexy song. And that was an incredible challenge. But I have this whole system of how to do that. And by the end of the 6 weeks, nearly every woman had a song that she was really grooving on. And I would make sure that for each individual class, I would play their songs. So everybody danced to everybody's song. But there was one woman I will never forget. She did the entire 6 weeks, and she just, no matter what I played, no matter what era of music, no matter what style, I'm not feeling it. I can't do this. I'm not feeling it. And then finally I picked a song, and I was watching her do the routine, and her whole body changed. And I was like, thank God, I finally found her song on the 6th week. And sure enough, there they were. There were the tears. And it was just, it's my And I was like the proud mama. I was sobbing with her because I was like, that is just such an incredible, empowering experience to finally like, oh my God, I get it. I can love myself.
What song was it? Do you
Yeah, what
remember?
song?
I think for her, it was Natural Woman.
Classic.
Great song. It's a great song. Yeah.
I had to
good
go. I
song.
think it was a classic. Yeah, I had a woman in her 80s take my class. This is before polls.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed
And
already.
Yeah.
She came up to me at the end of the 6 weeks and she was like, after 38 years of marriage, I thought I had done it all. Turns out I hadn't. Turns around and walks away. I'm like, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Iconic.
Yes. Had a woman who had the most incredible resting bitch face of anything I had ever seen. I was like, this woman hates me. Her friend brought her to this class and she hates me and she hates this class. Like the whole time I'm going, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this, because she was so And about the 4th week or so, she comes in and she's like, so I took your advice and I bought those knee-high leather boots. And let me tell you, I got fucked last night like I have never been fucked before. And I was like, what? And then on week 6, she comes in and she kind of sits down and she goes, okay, I have to tell the whole class something. Now, this is resting bitch face woman.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? And she goes, so I'm a mail carrier. And I have a senior center that I have to deliver the mail to, and there's this really long hallway that we walk down to get to the office. She goes, so for 6 weeks, I have been practicing my sexy walk in that hallway. She goes, and yesterday, while I'm doing it, I looked up at the end, and there's a fucking camera.
Oh my God.
I was like, this is the best thing ever. And like, that's just the way it went. Like every class, every week, there was just another revelation, and that's how I knew I was on the right path. It was just one thing after another, and these women were just exploding with happiness for the first time. And I had lawyers, I had doctors, I had housewives, I had every level, every age, every color, every religion.
Being sexy is for everyone,
It's
though.
for everyone.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's what made it so much fun for me. And then after polls were added, it just wasn't as fun for me. It just wasn't, because then it became something different. Then everybody was like, I want to lose weight, I want to compete, I want to go and do these, things, and I want to be a stripper. And I'm like, no, you don't. If you came to my classes, I will be the first person to tell you, no, you don't want to be a stripper. And here's why. And I will give you the list of reasons. And I can't tell you how many people ignored me and just came back months, years later and went, oh my God, you were so right. You could have saved me all of that.
Yeah.
And all of the women who heard my story about how the breast implants made me sick, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women who came to me and said, you saved my life by telling your story, because I didn't know that these health problems that I was having was tied to my breast implants.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is crazy how common that sickness is that people can get from implants.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that it's just like, you can still just go and get a pair. And
Yeah.
it's fucking
And
wild.
if you search "are breast implants safe?" you're going to get all the results that say, yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. If you search breast implant illness, you might start to find the actual correct information. Yeah. It's all about how you search.
Yeah. Your original class that you taught of like exotic movement and also like self-love, I feel like that just seems like, I feel like everyone needs to take a class like that.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
pole is great and it's cool to learn the tricks and stuff. It's very focused on like progress, tricks, like putting on a show. It's not as much about like connecting to yourself.
Right.
And I feel like I wish that they had incorporated that more when I was first starting to learn, because I would love to do a class like that. And I know a lot of people would.
Yeah. It's a completely different experience. And you should never give it away. Own your body, own your power, and don't ever give your power away, even to your life partner. You give a lot to your life partner. There's so much that you have that you want to connect. But my partner knows, we've been together 23 years. He didn't hold my power, and he never will. We need to be able to do that. We need to be able to own our power and be in a psychological and physical state where we are connected to our bodies in a way that we can not be afraid to be sexy. Being sexy is not promiscuous. Most people don't understand that. Right from the get-go in my career, before I even started new modeling, which was one of the first things that I did, that I was going to be sexy and I was going to be classy and I would never be promiscuous. And that was my triangle. That was just my personal challenge. And I did that. And everybody has these assumptions. Everybody looks at me and goes, oh, well, you did all these things. Well, you're easy. I'm going to get with you. And all these guys to this day, to this week, I still have guys jumping in my DMs like, hey, beautiful, you want a black eye? Jump into my DM and say, hey, beautiful, you're going to get a black eye. That's what you're going to get. Because I do not want people coming on to me. That is the biggest turnoff.
Yeah.
That is literally the biggest turnoff for me, is for people to come on to me or to chase me. I'm like, no, I've got what I need. I don't need anybody to tell me that I'm anything. And that's what I tried to teach my students.
Yeah. Wow. That was such good advice. I feel like this is like been like a little, like a good, I don't know, just a lot of life lessons.
Yeah, it's like a little therapy session almost.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, I think on that note we should go into our obsessions. I think that was a good, Okay, do you want to go first? Do you want to go first? Do you want to go last?
No, I'll go last. You guys tell me your obsessions. I want to know about you.
I can go first.
Yeah, go first.
So my obsession this week is an influencer, actually, that I've been following for a long time. Her name is Katie Jane Hughes, and she's a makeup artist. And I just rediscovered some of her content this week because she did a tutorial for how to do makeup like this one specific filter, the Bold Glam filter that's gone viral. And I was just like on her Instagram looking at her video tutorials, looking through her stories. Her stories are kind of like where she posts really good in-depth content because she'll do like, you know, a whole story on an entire look. So it'll be like, 10 slides, and then she'll save it as a highlight. So it's like this 20-minute thing that you can go through and watch. And she really takes you through the whole process of doing the makeup, but she's just like so knowledgeable. She's a celebrity makeup artist. So she does makeup for like a lot of models and actors, and she will show you how to do the look, but then also like give you all these tips as you're going through it. And I just, after we did our podcast with Megan a couple weeks ago, I've been trying to get back to like, okay, what do I like when it comes to makeup? Like, and what looks good on my face, and not doing so much of the like, okay, this is what Instagram or TikTok tells me makeup is supposed to look like. And so I just feel like I hadn't like played around or done anything fun with makeup in a long time until I rediscovered this makeup artist, Katie, and I was following some of her tutorials. And so today I gave myself a little purple eye look, and here we are. So
I love it. You have to share that with me.
Yeah.
Send me
I
that.
will.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
She's amazing.
You should also take a selfie today so we can post on the story to show our posse your makeup.
Yeah. I'll take a selfie for the posse.
Yeah. No, it looks really good. As soon as I sat down next to Taylor and was a couple inches from her face, I was immediately drawn to the glitter on her eyeshadow. I love it.
Thank you.
So cute.
Yeah. Okay, so I went to a wedding this last weekend, and it was a good friend from college, and she's Indian, and they had a lot of really amazing, beautiful cultural things, and I got henna done.
I love it.
And
It
I've
looks
been
so pretty.
really into my henna, but more importantly, I was very into her henna, which I will show you a photo of later because her photographer did some sneak peeks. It was the most elaborate, beautiful, like just so stunning, and just like even while I was getting this done, watching them do it, and they make it look so effortless, and it's so beautiful, and like everyone was getting their henna done, and it was all just so like unique and interesting, and it was like I just felt like as a creative, I was so like drawn to all this henna this weekend, and I'm very into it. So
It looks so pretty.
Thanks.
It does. I love it. I've been admiring it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Every time I like wash my hands, I'm like, oh, it's so cute. I love it.
Yeah.
How long does it last?
I think a while. Like
Really?
I think a couple weeks. Like
I've had henna before. It does last week.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So now I have this like fun thing. My nephew last night thought it was a tattoo, and I saw him. He was like, "Oh, you get new tattoos, so cool." I was like, "No, but I do love it."
Right? That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn?
Yeah.
Yes.
So my complete obsession this week is Daisy Jones and the Six.
Yes.
This new series, it is so nostalgic for me because it's about a band in the 70s in Hollywood on the Sunset Strip, and they are at the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Troubadour and Gazzarri's and all the places that I hung out for so many years, and it's like throwback, and I've already watched it twice, and they've only dropped 3 episodes. I've already watched all 3 twice.
I watched the first episode and I was really into it. I obviously, the nostalgia is not there for me, but I just like, I love anything from that time period, like the glamour of all of it. I don't know. It's sort of like Almost Famous type of vibes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do
Or
like
like
Almost
the
Famous.
Queen the Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, like similar type of like feeling as that movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's supposedly loosely based on Fleetwood Mac.
It is, yeah.
Which
So it's
is
based
cool.
on a book, and the author of the book used the Fleetwood Mac story as her inspiration.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not like the Fleetwood Mac story. That's just what inspired her to write this story. Yeah.
Okay.
What service is it on?
Prime.
Prime. Okay.
Amazon Prime. Yeah.
All right. I'll check it out.
Yeah,
Cool.
I agree with you. It's really good. I've only watched the first episode so far, but
It's-
I'm really into it.
It's really good, but it's next level if you lived that life.
Yeah, I bet.
Definitely.
That's amazing.
So fun.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been incredible. I've learned so much. The posse's going to love this one.
Awesome.
Tell the posse where they can find you.
So I'm on Instagram. It's Shevolved, Shevolved, and my website is also shevolved.com.
Okay. And if they have any extra questions or anything,
Follow me and drop me a DM.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm an open book.
Perfect. I feel like we're going to get a lot of questions after this episode comes out.
I think so
Okay,
too.
cool.
Awesome.
Very cool.
And then you can find
Thank
us
you.
at Naked Peach Boudoir on Instagram, TikTok, nakedpeachboudoir.com,
All the places.
all the places. Yeah, all of our links on our website and our Instagram.
Yeah. You can find me at T Smells with a Z.
You can find me at Anna McLaughlin Photo. I am half on Shadow Band now.
Yes.
And
we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.